How about now? Can you hear me now? Oh, Spencer, you're really nailing this right now. All right, I think you should be able to hear me now. The Streamlabs is actually showing the sounds are coming in. Okay, well this has been a really good first 2 minutes. Very productive. So I asked people earlier about what they thought of when they thought of Magitech because going back to kind of stuff that I was thinking of, when I think of Magitech, I think of I didn't really put it into this, but I was talking to Nevin Holmes about this. When I think of Magitech, I think of vibrant, colorful, energetic, nature, maybe. You know, we got like the crystal punk thing here. Like people talk about crystals, and I mentioned like nature somewhere around here, like right here, magic in the world. When I think of Magitech, I think of something very explosive and colorful and everything like that. And I think that's because I think of things like Is It decks, which, you know, just like look at some of these cards, right? They're just like explosions of colors, very dynamic, interesting things going on. And so that's what I was thinking of when I was thinking of Magitech. So I didn't really know if what I wanted to design was like technically qualified as Magitech or not, because I had my own perceptions about what that word meant. Again, based off of the fact that I don't know much about the genre at all. I asked people to tell me what they thought of, and like, by and large, boom, 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 it's Final Fantasy, right? Like that's what one person after another understandably said, like Final Fantasy VI, Final Fantasy VI. Or some variation of one of the Final Fantasy games. And again, like that's just a big void for me. I've never played Final Fantasy, and I have never played Chrono Trigger either, which means I'm missing out on like some of the big touchstones. But like Breath of the Wild came up, and I know Nevin told me to stay away from Breath of the Wild, but I'm not gonna do exactly what you're doing, Nevin. If I dip a little into Breath of the Wild, but like, isn't that what the Sheikah tech is all about in Breath of the Wild? I had Sheikah, like the Sheikah slate in. It's technology, right? Like, isn't that the thing about Sheikah tech in Breath of the Wild? Is they've got like tech and motorcycles and shit like that. That is way more advanced than everything else going on. So that's what I'm thinking. I saved some like keywords that I really liked, like magic is science, tech powered by magic, or tech so advanced it seems like magic. Boy, Keegan coming up with Luna Punk or Lunar Punk or some variation of that was very good, especially if we're talking about a sun exploding setting. And then I pitched, is it solar punk if we explode the sun? Because I think I really want to go with this exploding sun thing. And so, yeah, that's where we get Luna Punk or post-solar punk. You know, Nova Punk from I Am Quips might be my favorite of them all. Nova Punk is such a good name. Such a good name. For what I think we're gonna go with. We're gonna go with this. Like we're heading in this direction. Sir Heck, thank you. Thank you. Welcome. I remember you from TPK stuff. That's awesome. So I think we're going with this exploding sun business here, right? Like that's the cool stuff to do. And when I had this exploding sun idea, I came to Nevin again. I'm going to keep bothering Nevin, and they're going to have to just deal with it. I went to Nevin and I said, listen, do I have two divergent paths here? Magitech going in one path and this exploding sun, like solar-powered exo thing is the other path. And Nevin, I think, rightfully pointed me in the direction that said, just combine them, right? Like, why do they have to be separate things? And of course, Nevin is right. Nevin is a brilliant game designer. So I've listened. And I think I'm getting over the fact that I have these hookups of are hang-ups of what Solarpunk is when this is not actually the case. Like it doesn't have to be this. I can go with this dim setting and it can still be Magitech E, because, and we'll get to how I'm going to make it Magitech in a little bit. But the one other thing I wanted to share is I saved this picture from this artist, Ollie Schermacher. I just saw this on Twitter. So this is almost 2 weeks ago that this was posted. When I saw this picture, for me, this is like a really interesting direction that frame can go in, right? Because you've got clearly some sort of like exosuit wearing individual. But to me, the rest of the scene feels Breath of the Wild. You got the nature going on. You got this angry ass bird up here. This is obviously reminding me of like the ancient guardians that you see in Breath of the Wild. There's grass on top of it. Like this is sort of the direction that I was thinking it had to be if you were going to go Magitech. And so I think this is cool art. So just first of all, Ollie, very cool art. But it was just something that was in the back of my mind as I was thinking about all of this stuff. So I'm going to send this off to another page, because I think what we're going to do is we're going to focus on this exploding sun premise. And we're going to kind of just expand on some of this stuff, maybe delete some of the stuff that I had before, and merge some of the stuff that was coming up in conversations with Nevin about like the moats and stuff like that. Like I think the moats thing might still be interesting to include if we can make that make sense, and if we can make it not super complicated. Like Nevin said, I'm going to have to obviously write more because I'm reframing the whole thing. And yeah, absolutely. So like maybe in writing more, there's a few more elements to the game, a few more mechanics or things like that get added in. And that doesn't have to be bad. You know, I wrote this general goal for myself that I don't want to add a bunch of stuff. And I think that's maybe still true, that I don't want to add a bunch. But I shouldn't let myself be prevented from adding some things if they're cool. All right. Let's just start off from a basic premise. So dim premise. Already off to a great start with my typing. Sun explodes. Boom. Has to have that. That's the thing that's different about this game, is that the sun has exploded. Sun explodes. That's obviously a disaster. What happens when the sun explodes? Problems. What kind of problems? Well, obviously we are going to have some warmth and light issues. How is that solved? Well, giant-ass shards of the sun slam into the Earth. I'll just call it Earth for now. Slam into the Earth, creating giant wells of solar power, essentially, right? But like truly just like solar power, because it's the fucking sun. Cities built around them, and as a result you get different, I think you're gonna get like different types of cities depending on how big the shard was, right? Like if you get like a tiny little shard that hits, that it can't sustain a huge city, but like a huge ass chunk of the sun that hits, you got a big mega structure that comes up around that thing. The previous idea was that the shards were also going to hit, and this was from my original game of Dim, was that it hit people, and that those people then got like, instead of obliterated by the sun, transformed. They got transformed into immortal solar guardians and stuff like that. Now I don't want to do that. I want then for the sun to explode, you know, civilization, whatever, that's not even close, I don't care, is shattered. Meaning it's sort of separated communities. We don't have a network anymore. And as a result, like, danger lurks between. It's extremely dangerous to go in the dark. Going into the dark, and I don't think it's going to be totally dark. I think that's not fun at all. If it's just pitch black if you're outside of like a Soul City or whatever they're called. I think that would suck if it was totally dark. I think obviously there's still some like remnants of the sun like lingering in the sky so that you do get the sense of like dusk going on. Oh, this is interesting timing. Hi. I'm going to hop to break real quick and then just make sure that everything's taken care of. I'm back. Sorry about that. My partner just got home from work, and so my dog was obviously very excited about that, and it was going to be a loud, hilarious, fun time with the dog. So appreciate that. Okay, so where were we? We were talking about the danger in between the settlements and everything like that. So it's dangerous to just go walking between places, which is why we need the suits, the exos. The exos are the thing. So let's talk about the exos in DIM. I kind of come from two different perspectives on what they are. This is what the players are, right? The players are this. This is the thing that then there's a lot of different paths of what we could go in terms of the exos themselves. So let's talk about some of those options. Option one. The exos were built as a result of the disaster, right? So humanity is panicking. Our sun exploded. That's problematic for us. As a result, we do what we can to survive. And so we create, with what limited technology we have left, what limited resources we have left, these exos. And they are probably fueled by the sun wells. The idea being like activating the frames or the shells or the exos, whatever we end up calling these things, is costly. It's costly, it's risky, because they steal from the town's power. But we do it because they are necessary. We do it because sending them out helps us somehow. Again, that all depends on like what we're doing in play, but that's the premise, right? So premise 1, built as after the disaster. Option 2, they are unearthed because of the disaster. What do I mean by that? I mean, like, again, because I was looking up like Sheikah tech from Zelda, and just like Sheikah stuff in general, because I love Zelda, I love Breath of the Wild and all that stuff. The whole premise of like this stuff is that like this is super ancient. All the tech in Hyrule that's the fancy Sheikah stuff is actually like super old, which I think is kind of interesting. So I think it would be interesting then to well, I'm going to finish my thought and then I'm going to read that like these were built forever ago, and the sun impacting Earth reveals them or activates them, right? They're slumbering or whatever deep below the surface in like old ancient ruins and things like that. This huge solar flare explosion thing activates them, and again, I don't think they're not robots. They are still exosuits people wear, but like we suddenly have access to them. Like there are holes in the ground, and these things are shown, and suddenly we can do this. Like suddenly we have access to these things, and there's hope, right? Like restores some sense of hope because these things are here. Okay, Eldritch Mouse. There could be a yearly event where all the remaining light goes out, and it does go pitch black, and dangerous monsters get very dangerous. Yes, exactly. Like that's a cool idea. Having things where, like that's the whole premise of the game, is keeping the light on, essentially, right? Like you want to make sure that whatever you do, the frames, the suits, the exos, the shells are being used responsibly so that everybody stays alive and that we keep our light going. We keep the sun running as best we can. Now, none of this is Magitech yet, right? None of this is Magitech. Very Dark Souls vibe. Yeah, exactly. Yes. True. TPK roleplay. I know you all. I'll be hanging out with you all in 2 days. It's going to be very fun. Yes, exactly. Like reigniting the flame, or relighting the flame. Exactly. Like you could be going around trying to like rekindle sunwells and stuff like that. Like going around trying to get that stuff going on. Like, well, thank you, TPK. That's very nice of you. Trying to get things lit back up as best we can. But like I said, none of this so far is Magitech, right? It's just tech. It's just it's solar tech. That's the focus right now. The focus is on technology either ancient that we didn't have access to before that's now activated, or technology that we built as a result of a disaster. And like I still think it hasn't been made clear yet, but this is not modern day, and it's not the future. I don't want to do sci-fi, and I don't want it to be just today either. I like, this is the chance to lean into the fantasy, is that this is old. This is old stuff that's going on here. Like tech levels maybe reaching steampunk in the biggest cities, like with the biggest wells. But like the tech level of a city is dependent on the size of the well, right? Like however big the well is, that's how much you can progress. Horizon Zero Dawn, secrets hiding beneath the surface. Yes, exactly. like Horizon Zero Dawn did a really cool job with this, right? Like they're like the upper world or the sort of exposed world, very natural, very vibrant, overrun by robot dinosaurs. But then below the surface, there's all the old like research labs and all of humanity's attempts to try and preserve itself as best as possible, knowing that this disaster event was going to happen. So, so I still think this is all very cool. Like the exos then could be like literally just like shells that are sitting around, and then like you as players hop into them and you go out and do work. It could be a backpack that you wear and you activate it like Iron Man. It could be either one of those things. But again, it's not, get out of here. It's not Magitech yet. And so the question is, do we want to include that Magitech element? Or where does the Magitech element come in? Let me just make a thing that's like Magitech ? And I'm going to talk about Magitech in these things, each of these options, because I want to see if there's a way to overtly put it into the options. But I think option 3 is going to be, is already overtly, which is the magic already exists, and some small group of humanity can summon exosuits. Why can they do it? Using Nevin Holmes' approach, Nevin and Jam's approach, it's like they are fused with what they called motes. Maybe we'll use a different word, but I like motes for now. Motes, which are like elemental beings, which are elemental and magical beings, right? And these humans that are fused with them then can use the motes powers to summon, or just power up / use the suits. Like maybe the suits themselves aren't magical, right? But they are fueled by magic, and they're fueled by the motes that these people have fused with themselves. Meg has thought, a neuro uplink. I just need to write that down somewhere, just so that it's neuro uplink, just so that I have it on here, right? Like, I think that's really good thought to have. Who knows what we're gonna do with it? We could. Here's the thing about, like, when I think about neuro uplinks and stuff like that, there's a reason when I made Frame, I didn't go near any of the stuff like the operator stuff, like the Tenno stuff. That stuff is interesting and cool, and obviously like Warframe pulls it off, but for me, that was stuff that I didn't want to go anywhere near because I didn't know how to deal with it. That's what I think of when I think of neuro uplink, but I know it's different. Obviously, it's different. And I think also a thing to note here, just to remind myself, is when I'm talking about the exos, I'm talking about like human scale. This is a reminder to myself that I'm not talking about, not big mechs, maybe they push 8 feet because they're exosuits, so they're added on top of that. Ish, something like that, but they're like human scale. That's just something for me because I don't want, we're not giant behemoths going out into the darkness. We look like other people. There's only a small amount of people that yeah, exactly, Meg. That's exactly it, right? Like, so, oh yes, it's trial and error. That actually reminds me. So the I don't remember what I called it. I should pull up that doc wherever I have it. Dipping into the Sunwell. I had a premise in the original DIM document, which was this idea that like once a year, a town will throw someone in the well, because there's the chance that you get infused with that power, and then in my previous game, you'd become one of those immortal beings. But what if it's like you throw someone in the well, and now they resonate with the exos, right? It's total trial and error. I do like this idea in general, though. Like, only a small number of people can match up with a moat or resonate with the exos, right? Like, that's good. That's good stuff. Yeah, exactly. So now we're seeing where we can get some of that magic stuff thrown in, right? Like, it is either the exos themselves are fueled by the moats, they are summoned themselves as magical things. Now we're seeing where we can get some of that. And I think, like, we're leaning into like elemental plus solar plus lunar magic. It's the premise, right? Plus darkness, because you have to have a darkness if you have a solar, right? The lunar, I don't think, is the darkness. I think the lunar is still, it's just a different way of using the solar magic. And to reiterate, once again, on Nevin's idea, I wrote it up earlier, but it's important to write ideas multiple times so that I remember them. The combo idea, which is, during character creation, you select a moat that you've fused with, plus an exo that you want to pilot. Meaning the moat could give some stat stuff. It's elemental. The exo that you choose gives the class, right? So in Frame right now, there's no two parts to character creation. You just purely choose one thing. You choose the frame that you want to play as from the beginning, and that's it, right? You're just like, I'm gonna play as Steel. End of discussion, right? Like, two people could play Steel and choose different stats at the beginning, but they have the same powers regardless. The idea of, like, the moats then being something that could fuel the exos then implies that the powers would be flavored by the moat that you choose, which would be like the type of magic. What's Meg got here? The idea, enjoy the idea of different magic wells being a thing. Meg, yes, of course. Why does it have to only be solar wells, right? Like, let's note this. Different magic type wells, like, maybe they're primarily solar, but there are there could be like lunar wells out there, right? Why not have like a lunar well? And then, like, there's some like gnarly darkness wells out there. Yes is what I'm saying to this. Yes. Are my 3 stats... What have I done? Oh, I'm just really ruining. Are my 3 stats solar, lunar, and darkness? Are those my 3 stats? Because frame and light and everything like that are based off of 3 stat blocks, where you have something that represents, like, loud, emotional, powerful stuff, which was called, like, force. It was called it's called force in frame. It's pyre in what you call it. Oh, Adam Vass is here. Hello, Adam. Thank you. Let's do this thing. Oh, now we're ready to go. Now we're cooking with gas. So yes, is that possibly our 3 stats? Maybe. I don't know. I'd have to figure out which one is going to be which related to force, flow, and focus. I have initial ideas of what it could be. I'm going to just highlight that because I like that as an idea. And cool. Oh, Adam, the brief. The sun exploded. It was a disaster. When the sun exploded, it rained down shards of actual sun onto the planet. These sun shards created wells of light and warmth that the remnants of humanity have now built communities around. Depending on how big the shard was, you're going to get a big city versus a small little community. In some way, and I've got three options here, exos come into the scene. Either we built them as a result of the disaster, they were unearthed and activated as a result of the solar disaster, or they already existed and we infused some magic into stuff because some human beings have either been like thrown into these wells and given like an ability to resonate with the exos, or they've fused with these like motes, which are these baby elemental beings. This is an idea that Nevin came up with, and that resonates with the exos. And now we're coming up with just a sense of like how magitech-y each of these things feels on its own, because I think in general I like this idea of blending magitech with this solar disaster premise that I had written 2.5 years ago or something like that. I hope that was a good recap. That felt like a pretty decent recap. Okay. And Meg has just been dropping really good knowledge bombs. X is being created to explore the wells. All right, so I have to make sure I cite my sources here because Meg has mentioned a lot of things here. All right, so what is magitech-y about these options? In option 1, the exos were built as a result of the thing. They're fueled by the solar wells. This is like, it feels very just, it feels very tech to me. It doesn't feel like there's any magic in there. I have to write down the word at the beginning, though. Nova Punk. Who came up with Nova Punk? I am Quips. I'm going to just make sure I put this in because, God, that's a really good name for the premise, right? Nova Punk. It's so good. So Meg says, if the communities are being built around them, it stands to reason that they'd want to understand the sources. Sources of the exos or sources of the sun? Maybe caught you mid-thought, so I'm gonna brew on this. But right now, option 1 on its own doesn't feel like Magitech, right? It just feels like tech. It's a tech thing. It's purely we make solar powered exos that are, I mean, we mean literally solar powered, like they're powered by the sun's energy in the thing. Isn't Novapunk such a cool term? Yeah, so they would want to understand like the influence of the wells and everything like that. So how do we make this one overtly Magitech? Not sure yet. Not sure off the top of my head how to turn this into Magitech, unless, like, of course, all of these could just become Magitech if the society before the disaster was magical, right? Like, then, yeah, then we've got that problem kind of taken care of. Option 2, there's potential here, right? There's potential with option 2, which is the exos, the shells, the frames, whatever we're going to call them, they get activated / unearthed because of the disaster. Sun slams into the earth, boom, cool. These things, which are like powered by the sun or powered by anomalies, get activated. And this is one of those things where, like, it's ancient tech, which feels magical. These things, these exos are going to feel so strange to the survivors who find them. They are unlike anything that exists, that they will feel magical. But it could just be tech. It still doesn't have to be Magitech yet. Like, it's one of those things where, you know, science reaching to the point where you don't understand it anymore, just approaches being magic or whatever that phrase is, right? So it's not inherently magical, but again, it could be made magical, right? It could still be made magical by the whole thing. Option 3, riddled with Magitech, right? It's got the moats, which are magical, the wells infusing people is magical, and then the well type is going to influence type of magic, right? You've got this idea of resonating with the exos, either via the moats or well dipping or something, right? Or you just magically train, so you can activate the exos when nobody else can. Have I thought of a new name? Haven't thought of a new name at all. No idea what I'm going to call it yet. I wrote it's called Dim as the premise, but that's only because Dim was the name of the 200-word RPG I wrote based off of the setting. But it was called Dim because you were like these solar powered beings that every time you died, you dimmed a little, and as a result, your power shifted from being very light focused to very dark focused with time. I don't know if that name applies necessarily if the exos aren't dimming with time, unless like your resonance or your moat dims with time. That's something to consider. All right, what did Meg put here in the chat? But the elemental entities' moats are awakened with the wells being created. They're an ancient being. They respond in the same way that people. It's like, yeah. Okay. Cool. Right. So, right. The moats could be here too. Right. The moats could be here. Really, these two options 2 and 3 can pretty much be the same thing. Like option 2 can be the setup. Ancient tech, ancient moats, and everything like that. Ancient elemental powers, magic powers. Sun explodes. Disastrous for our planet. Disastrous for our society as we understand technology and everything like that right now. Then, so not only do we see a civilization crash, but then we see the emergence of tech. Fuck yes, that's what it is, right? Like, it's the emergence of magic, right? Because of the disaster. And like we see that in tons of games, right? Like some disastrous event, like the Awakening or whatever it's called in Shadowrun, or every like lots of games had this premise of like some event, suddenly there's just magic in the world. I think that's fine. I think that's kind of cool actually, to have it not be to have the whole world not inherently be magical in the beginning. That way the Magitech feels... So Magitech isn't prevalent. It's rare. We're still trying to understand it. The exos just happen to be one of those things that we got quick access to because there was this strange thing where we got this blending of the moats or whatever with with humans, and then boom, we as society are going to start slowly incorporating some of this magic into our lives. So you'll see it in small bits, and I think again, like it's bigger in places with bigger wells. So wherever the bigger wells are, you're going to see bigger influences of Magitech. Places that are just like barely holding on, small little shard of light, they don't have time for Magitech. They're just trying to keep alive with what they are. Oh, Adam, I forgot to tell you, this is completely unrelated, but just before this, I've got a PS5 now, and it's downloading stuff. And I downloaded No Man's Sky. So if we do want to go on our trip through space, it's going to look beautiful on my end. And my partner is jumping around over here because she's responsible for the PS5. So important to shout out Kate. She's fantastic. And my sleepy dog. She didn't contribute, but shouting her out anyway. It's her birthday. So anyway, that's a total tangent. Let's now pivot and design No Man's Sky, the RPG. No. Okay, this is good though. Meg, absolutely no need to apologize. The world creation stuff is fantastic. I love these things that you're bringing in here. Oh yeah, you did create No Man's Sky. It is Necronautilus. What am I talking about? Of course. Um, that's so true. Um, okay, so dim or solar? Yeah, light and dim go together pretty well too. That's a really good point. Light is my other game, and this is the same system-ish. Yeah, that makes sense. So the other things to note about all of this is that God, yeah, Nova's a really good name too, isn't it? Oh God, did I? Please tell me. I think it's okay. Yeah. Nova's a very good name. Names: Nova, dim, solar, something like that, right? Something like that. Nova would be really good. Fuck, Nova's a really good name. Other things to keep in mind. There are bad exos. I think that's for sure true. And bad modes. So you got people out there that have access to the same powers that you have, but they're not there to help. I'm gonna want to create, or I'm gonna say ensure, because it's already there, a tight gameplay loop, because I love tight gameplay loops. I'm learning this. To consider, not to necessarily add, because I told myself earlier I don't want to add a bunch of stuff, but like consider downtime between stuff. Like there's a whole bunch of stuff that you can do in like networking the remaining cities, right? Like connecting them with one another, building up a town around a well, like supporting it, growing these sorts of things. Like there's obviously huge potential for all of that stuff there. And Frame, as it was written, didn't have any of this stuff because Frame didn't give a shit about any of this stuff. Frame was a power fantasy. The power fantasy element is still going to be in this game because I still like the revised combat rules for Frame as opposed to Light. So the exos in this game are going to feel very powerful. And I think that's kind of important too. Like they're magic powered, so of course they feel more powerful and more devastating than everybody else who's out there causing trouble that isn't an exo, right? Like those fools should just get demolished by you. But hey, I mean, what if this does just expand? Spencer, stop putting like barriers on yourself on this, right? Like it doesn't have to, I don't have to do that. Darkness well is caused by literal sadness in the world. I mean, maybe, right? Maybe that's what it is. Maybe there's sad modes and happy modes. Yeah, bust the framework, exactly. Like I don't have to follow Frame. And importantly, Will told me to do this anyway. Like Will Yopst, they edited the Frame document and gave fantastic feedback. Like the game Frame is much better because Will looked at it. And Will did say, you don't have to make a lot, but you should consider putting something in here, some sort of guidance for what you do between missions. And I'm glad I listened to Will. I put some of those things in. But why not make it more robust? There's a reason Blades in the Dark is my favorite game. It's because it has a very clear gameplay loop of active, go do the job / mission, downtime, do the stuff that is building up like a macro level. Black hole wells, I mean, let's just put it in here somewhere. Black hole wells. Meg again. Yeah, I like that. I like black hole wells. That's good. Um, so things to consider: bad exos, bad moats. What is the role of the exos? How are they perceived? Are they, are they terrifying because they're magic? At least mostly magic. Are they revered? I don't know. I don't know yet. I haven't figured any of that stuff out. When I was kind of first pitching some of this dim stuff to my friend Mike a while ago as a totally different system, weirdly enough, Dogs in the Vineyard was a game on my mind with this. Because the premise of Dogs is you play as the dogs, who are kind of like gunslinger paladins. Is a fun way of thinking. Mormon gunslinger paladins is a fun way of breaking it down. And you go to like town to town and you show up and there's a problem and you deal with it, and like that could be the premise of Dim. Like you show up town to town. I don't think I'm gonna do that. Like I don't think I'm gonna lean too much into like you show up, what's the problem, deal with the problem, move on to a new town. I think I'm much more like this idea of like staying and building up the town, helping them, and then maybe like eventually like trying to create a network. Like as you connect more towns to one another, like their wells could like literally link up, and so they both get a boost in power. And this is a way for humanity to start bringing itself back. And if the wells are different different types of things, then like you get cool things by linking up towns that have different wells. Maybe that's a thing. Okay. So I'm liking this premise. I think as the options were described, I think it's starting to manifest to me what the game is going to look like, at least in like from a setting perspective and everything like that. Sun explodes. It's a disaster. Our civilization demolished by this event. Shards of sun slam into the earth. Or maybe yes, partly that, partly just like the radiation of the sun hitting the earth too. Whatever it is, that stuff activates the magical buried element of like magitech in the planet. So the exos and the motes or whatever it is that are responsible for the resonation with the exos activated. We then as a species begin to build ourselves up around these locations. The exos are then responsible for the survival of humanity. They go out, they push back the threats from beyond, they go explore some of the old ruins where like the exos were from, but also like old human ruins of where our stuff is, because that stuff is still valuable. And then maybe you're building connections between, you're building up towns, you're connecting towns as sort of like a long play sort of game. And by having that type gameplay loop, exactly like Meg is saying here, it works both at like a long campaign range, but also is like, this is what a one-shot is, because it's this is how you play the game. Like, it's just this mission. Go do this mission. And then you can kind of do like a little bit of hand-wavy stuff at the end about the macro stuff. Okay. That feels good. I think... Oh, it's okay. I think that feels good. I think that feels like a good bit of more work here. I'm glad I did this tonight, because I was talking with Nevin about this a couple of hours ago, and good brain blasting was going on, and if I didn't put it on the page right away, I'm sure it would have been lost. And without having you all here, I think a lot of this stuff wouldn't have come forth. So this is good. I think this is I think generally I want to keep these streams to like somewhere to like 45 minutes to an hour. So we're approaching an hour or so of doing this. So I think this is a good place to stop. Again, we haven't hit any of the mechanics of the game. I think we can start thinking about that stuff with the next stream that's focused on Nova. I'm just going to start using Nova because it feels good. And just thinking about like what mechanics will port over cleanly and what needs some work and stuff like that. I think that's good. I think that's a plan for now. Sweet. Awesome. Well, thanks so much, everybody who came on by. I really appreciate chatting with you. I mean, just fantastic ideas and contributions. It's so awesome to have you all here and part of the process that makes it really fun for me. So if you missed some of this, like, it should all be up as a VOD immediately afterwards, and I'll put it on YouTube as well. But I think that's good. And then I've already got scheduled for myself a little time to do another stream tomorrow. I might do more of this just because it's really fun. I also told myself I wanted to do some Slayers talk, the Slayers Almanac. So, God, I have such an itchy nose. We'll see which one I feel like talking about tomorrow. But I feel like I got a lot of good Nova work done tonight. Oh, I'm just going to keep using Nova. If you use it, it'll manifest into the world. Okay, cool. Thanks, everybody. Have a good one.